Oh my God, that's a good way to start, isn't it? I am the Phoenix, Arizona raised adopted son of two wonderful, caring, albeit conservative parents who don't necessarily know how they ended up raising a leftist punk rocker who once thought it was a good idea to drive around the country in a van playing ska music for $20 a day. But they've always supported my wild ambitions. I have had a handful of careers already. I always wanted to be a radio DJ. I somehow survived 10 years in the IT industry, during which time I fell in love with Tina. And we moved from Arizona to Colorado, to New York City, back to Colorado, back to New York City, and then to Charleston, with my major career change being attending culinary school in New York in 2003. And even though I've been a cook for 20 years, I wouldn't say that my current career hasn't been a handful of micro careers within. Starting as a line cook at age 34, when I look back on it, isn't necessarily a great life decision. That's me hanging out with Jacques Pepin, maybe you know. But I have survived and thrived in this business, not because I'm a great cook or because I'm a wild creative, but because I find my niche and I look for opportunity in non-traditional ways. So that's me, David. Take it, Tina.
I'm Tina, also a native Phoenician. Views were much more liberal at my house. My parents were always supportive and encouraging of my sister, my 8,000 Mexican cousins, and myself. That said, I'm sure that they were a little confused and concerned at times by my unconventional choices and constant need for change. Although they probably shouldn't have been. I come from Mexican women who aren't scared to jump in, especially if it's fun. At the age of 19, I was off. David mentioned our pinging back and forth between Colorado and New York City. A couple years into our first time living in the city, it was time to go back to Colorado, a choice that we immediately regretted. I left working for Zach Posen to go sell handbags at Neiman Marcus to football wives. Hungrier than ever, we soon returned to New York to resume our creative careers. Skip to 2008, and I was laid off, along with half the country, and became a stay-at-home mom to the magical Jessie Ruth. A couple years later, I wanted to go back to work, but this time I had to do it different. Luckily, food retail was exploding and required much the same skill set. Now, in my mid-30s, I knew I needed to be strategic and worked really hard to get to the top. After a couple years, I had earned the title of lead merchant and creative director of Dean & DeLuca. And I finally had a purse filled with caviar samples and daily cake tastings. My goal was accomplished. It's time to start over.
So we arrived in Charleston on my 45th birthday, August 4th, 2015, complete fish out of water. Before my partner in life became my partner in literally every waking moment of each other's lives, I was fired twice, and as Tina said, she was let go from her job. She never gets fired. I get fired. Starting our own thing became quite the obvious path forward because, you know, twice fired is great for your reputation in town. And so that had to happen or we needed to get moving maybe somewhere else. But our ambition to do something in town here has always been steadily backed by successful local people from day one. Michael Shemtoff really pushing me to embrace my love of Chinese food, focus on that, as well as allowing us access to the daily for what I remember was some of the best cooking days of my career. Of course, Alex and Vanessa Harris, owners of Charleston Poorhouse, who for all intents and purposes gifted us a restaurant space that we moved Kwai Fei into 4 years ago. We opened Kwai Fei in about 8 days with the expenses filling one credit card, and we didn't really have a choice with that decision because Kwai Fei was our only source of income for the family. But a year later, we find ourselves in China, finally being able to visit the region where the food that we cook is from. It was a great adventure. We were looking more for like validation rather than inspiration, and it wasn't easy navigating the language barrier without Google access, but we did get by. The people we met in all 4 cities we visited were warm, friendly, excited to share their food with us. We wandered back alleys, wet markets, food stalls, anywhere we could find more examples of Sichuan cooking. Now, the worst thing in the world would have been to find we were doing a disservice to the food we love. So I was super elated when I found that we were actually doing really good work. At least, I think so.
At Kwai Fei, we were finally allowed to be ourselves. Being vulnerable, elated, grateful, and even sometimes annoyed could all be shared in a very real way with our guests. They were with us on this journey. That's me. It turns out that raw and imperfect is perfect for us. At Quaife, it's a small company with a highly invested team. And the questions that we ask ourselves most often are, what's the opportunity in this sometimes shit situation? And how will these decisions affect our team? This has allowed us to be agile, creative, and seize opportunities where there are quite often roadblocks. Quaife's success has given us opportunities to open a few businesses. First, there was Micho, a shipping container that served border-style Mexican food. The food was a hit, but we soon realized that we were just not the right operators for this type of project, so we sold it. Next, we created Lady Tsin, where we took over our own kitchen and created sales during slow months. These soon became our busiest months. She's getting a rework and will be moving into her own space in 2023. Here we go. Then there's Portal. And I loved my quirky little resale world, but it started to fill up with bachelorettes, and all of the local customers couldn't get into a fitting room, so I closed it. The door, now it's a pop-up. When we talk about these closures, people sometimes look at us and they're like, oh, sorry. But I don't look at it like that. I think that just by taking the risks, they were successes.
And obviously, we're going to keep trying. Our next concept is on a magnitude of something we've never done before, both from conceptualization to the actual building out of the space to actually trying to grow up a little bit professionally in the process. Maybe. So to us, the risk is real. We're kind of putting everything out there and that we've done over the last 5 years for something we've never actually done before, and it's super exciting. What's really the worst thing that can happen? That I just don't think it's anything that can't be adjusted and overcome for. So I guess the whole point of this is a lot of dominoes had to fall into the right spot for Tina and I to accomplish as much as we have been able to do since we started Quaife 4 years ago, or almost 5 years ago now. But we feel like putting ourselves out there and taking risks and not being scared to fail is what helped push those dominoes into the right place to get us where we needed to go. So thank you all.
Thank you.
And now let's go have a lot of martinis. Thanks for having us.